We have this series that we've been going through called Wait For It. And I don't know if this resonates with the rest of y'all, but anytime we start getting into a series, I just realize how deep the struggle gets with any series that we go through. And I've had a few conversations with people about waiting. And I don't know that there's a topic that is more universal in our struggle than waiting. I think we wrestle with this principle of waiting. We don't like to wait for meals. We don't like to wait in line. We don't like to wait in traffic. We certainly don't like to wait on God. We don't like to wait for just different stuff in our life, especially the crummy seasons. I don't know if any of y'all have ever hit a crummy season in life. Anybody ever have like a patch that you're just like, man, when is this over? And it just feels like forever. I think in the extreme cases, people that land in this lane of just like, when is it going to get better? I think you can ultimately end in some very tragic endings. Just extreme hopelessness. I don't want to give a hopeless message, but I do want us to understand that while we live and breathe here and now, we're going to be on this path of waiting for Christ to come back. Now, that may not sound like some message that you're uber thrilled about. Like anytime that I hear Jesus is coming back, it kind of has like this old school church vibe to it. But if we look at it like Jesus said of himself that he is coming back, that's good news. Like that's something worth being excited about, that what we're going through in this life and all of the things that we can tally up that are challenging to go through, that's not the end narrative. Like Jesus is coming back. That's good stuff. In the meantime, we can't change the fact that we are in this long season of waiting. And we will always wait for something in any given season of life. We just honored graduates. I guarantee you that they were waiting for school to get over. But little do they know that school has just begun, and it's a school of life. So wait for it. It's funny being at a pastor's conference. There's about 4,000 pastors that were down in Nashville this past week. And the Gaylord Opryland Hotel Resort, whatever it's called, it was an amazing facility, huge, but they were just not prepared for the amounts of pastors. And then there was another convention going on of police officers. And so you have like several thousand people at one place at one time, which meant, one, we were safe because the other one was like police, and if there was injury, then you had pastors to pray for them. So they just weren't prepared to serve that many meals. And it was like the staff that normally works the facility, they were annoyed at the amount of people that were there. It's like, oh, we had to come early because of you. Like that was the attitude that we got. And so we had to wait longer for meals because they weren't prepared for the numbers, which I thought was ironic in the throes of all of this waiting. And by the way, the first message, I didn't even share this in the first service, the first message was from a pastor. It was the first time that I had heard him speak. And I just thought it was so funny. His opening story was about waiting at the airport. And he just kept saying, I hate to wait, I hate to wait, I hate to wait. And all throughout this past week, there were just subtle reminders or not so subtle reminders of the value and the discipline of waiting. The sooner we can get our head and our heart wrapped around the discipline of waiting, the better our life is going to flow. Our tantrums can be minimized. Our frustrations can be minimized once we grab a hold of this. A question for us this morning as we jump into this conversation of waiting is, how important is waiting? How important is it for us to understand how to wait? We're going to catch the significance of that today as we continue to go through Luke chapter 12. Jesus gives further explanation in detail with waiting. If you remember, he starts us off with the comparison. He says that you should wait. You should wait. Be ready for service. Have your lamps lit. You must be like people waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet. And those people are slaves or servants. And so we've been given responsibility with our life. Our life is a lifetime of responsibility, and we need to be responsible with what we've been given while Jesus is away. And there's going to be a day that he returns, and we should give careful attention to what he returns to. Not only in a collective way, but in your own personal life, it would do you well to give thought, to give careful consideration to the flow of your life. Would you be excited that he's seeing you do what you're doing when he returns? That should be like a perpetual reminder of like, I want to be about his business. I want to be about what he has told me to do. With that, here's the question for the day, and I'm going to ask it at the end of the service. What have you been given? If we can't answer this question, you're not going to know what to do. You're not going to know what to do with your life if you don't know what he has given you. So it is worth the time for us to sit on this one and give careful consideration as to what he has given you. And as with anything, it's not like it's a massive stretch for us to understand what's been given. It's very demanding. And it requires a lot from us. And so the discovery of it may not be hard, but living it out is where the challenge is. So last week, let me remind us that waiting is not being apathetic, nor is it being overactive. You remember the kid mattress and the cleaning cart. We're either laying down or we're busy. In either case, that's not the demonstration, the accurate demonstration of waiting. But there's somewhere in the middle where we're waiting. This life that we're living right now is a life of being responsible with what he has given. So, what has he given you? What has been given to you? Father, right now I pray that you would prep our heart and our mind, that we would receive these words that we're going to read through today. Help us have understanding by the wisdom of your Spirit. And if there's anything complicated or challenging for us, we pray and we trust that right then in that moment that you are going to give understanding and clarity. So our heart is open, our mind is open. We trust you. We want to hear from you. In Jesus' name, amen. Another question is, just how serious is Jesus about waiting? That answer is going to be given to us in part 2 of this parable that Jesus gives. You need to be like those who are waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet. And so you need to have the house ready. You need to have the lights lit. You need to be ready for when he returns. You don't know when he's going to return. And those who are faithful in the waiting, the responsible waiting, when he comes back and he sees that you've been responsible, you will be blessed. And what does a blessed life look like? The master, when he comes home, he's going to get himself ready and invite you to the table that you've been cleaning for the last chunk of time, and he's going to come and serve you. Now, we get this message all the time that Jesus didn't come to be served, but to serve. And so we want to live likewise. We want to live in a way where we serve one another. But at the same time, there's going to be a day, and I think it's going to be awkward, where he serves us. How many of you like being served? Okay, that's a lot of honesty right there. Good job. How many of you would prefer to serve others? And that's not making you look like, oh, yes, I'm more like Jesus than the first group. Okay? Some of us feel more comfortable serving others. And those same hands that talk about being comfortable serving others, I guarantee you that when others try to serve you, you're awkward with it. No, I don't need a glass of water. I can get it. I don't need you to do that. I got it. It's like a case of, I got this. Which ultimately it leads to a place of pride and arrogance. I don't need help. I'm here to help you. You know, one of the interesting things, so at convention, Summer and I, we signed up to work the green room, not because we like to rub shoulders with people, but because we were just asked to, and we said yes. I thought it was interesting that the couple that we got paired with, their names are Ted and Diane Roberts. And they have a tremendous ministry that goes worldwide. And a little bit of history on him is he was a gymnast in high school and college, like did the rings, you know. And so dude was chiseled and cut. He's like in their 70s or 80s now. He was also a fighter pilot in the military. He's done a whole ton of triathlons. And so he has always been fit, chiseled, and he would command a room. When you put all of those things together, he would have the command of the room. Well, for the last 6 years, there's been a progressive Parkinson's overtaking his body. And when we were standing there, and he's an interesting personality, very driven, very direct. And while we were waiting, I was just asking him questions. I just went for it, knowing who he is and how he's wired. I just asked him straight up. I said, so what has Parkinson's, what has God shown you through Parkinson's? And he just looked at me. And in so many words, he basically said that all of how he was wired before in the previous 60-some years, it has helped him see others. And it has helped him allow others to help him. Waiting. Actively waiting on. Jesus is going to do that one day for those who have been faithful with what has been given to them. We need to understand what's been given to us. We're going to pick up in this parable halfway through with a question from Peter. Now keep in mind, let me just paint the picture for you. At the beginning of chapter 12, it explains that there are thousands of people who have gathered around Jesus. So it's a big scene. And then you have the 12. And Jesus went through that whole long list of different things to watch out for and keep your mind about these things. And don't worry. Worrying is wasteful. Don't worry. But wait. Actively wait. And it's almost like Jesus was getting a breath to, it was either he was pausing to let the words sink in or something, but Peter interrupts. And Peter's the guy for us. Do you have that friend that asks questions because they don't have a filter? You know what I'm saying? Like everybody's thinking it, but they said it. Do you have that friend? Peter is that guy for us because he jumps in partway through this parable or through this teaching, and he says this, Lord, are you telling this parable to us or to everyone? In other words, who is this waiting message for? Is this for us, the 12, the elect, the select, the special ones, the ones you've called by name, the ones that you are spending the most time? Is it for us or is it for everyone? And in true Jesus fashion, he doesn't answer Peter directly. He just continues teaching. And through the continued teaching, he answers Peter's question. But we ask that same one. Even now, you're like, well, that's for you, Pastor. You're the one that needs to understand waiting. Not me. That's like a ministry thing. No, it's a life thing. But who is this for? Jesus says, who then is the faithful and sensible manager his master will put in charge of his household servants to give them their allotted food at the proper time? That's a long stringed out question of who is the servant that's going to get promoted by the master to take care of the other servants? Who is that servant that's going to get the promotion? Jesus goes on, he answers his own question. That slave whose master finds him working when he comes will be rewarded. If you're into marking up your Bible, write in or put a highlight or a circle around that slave. Y'all say that slave. That slave that gets promoted with more responsibility and more just weight on his shoulders, and it's a good weight, it's from the master. That slave whose master finds him working when he comes will be rewarded. So there's working and waiting that go hand in hand. So if your relationship with Christ can be defined with the word apathy, that is not the picture of waiting and working. Neglect, laziness, cavalier. If those words define how you wait right now, this message is for you. On the same vein, if your waiting looks like overworking to where you're not slowing down enough to hear the voice of God, then that's also not the lane that we need to run down. It kind of feels like, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm like, man, that sounds like such a small, sweet spot to land in. Of not over waiting, but then also not overworking. It is possible. The slave whose master finds him working when he comes will be rewarded. I tell you the truth, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. Jesus, he's given a teaser right here, saying, if you're faithful with what's been given you, there's going to be more that will be given to you when the master comes. I don't even know what that looks like in the conversation of eternity. But I want to contend for an eternal perspective so that what I do here and now sets me up to receive all that he has for me then. And even right now, like, how would you assess your life right now and what you're about? Like, do you truly have a mind on eternity? Is your life, the way it's lived, is it evidenced by your life that your heart and your mind is down the road there in eternity? Because if you're faithful what's been given to you, it's not about a promotion, but there's reward and there's blessing given back. But also, with that reward and with that blessing comes greater responsibility. But if that slave, y'all say that slave. Are y'all still with me now? Come on now. That sounded kind of tired. Say that slave. There we go. But if that slave says in his heart, my master is like, he's delaying in his coming. He's not coming back. And what happens is that slave begins to beat the male and female slaves and to eat and drink and get drunk. And that slave's master will come on a day he does not expect him and at an hour he does not know. Do y'all want to know how serious Jesus is about waiting? Do you want to know? Because in the very next sentence, we catch a glimpse of how serious Jesus is about the life that we live here and now. Let's be reminded that this is Jesus, the Savior of all humanity, the Son of the living God. And these are his words that help us understand the severity and the intensity of waiting. That slave who is irresponsible, this is what happens to him. The master will cut him to pieces and assign him to a place with the unbelievers. Some translations say he will cut him in two and send him to the unbelievers. That's a crazy, bold statement. He started out as a slave doing what he knew he should be doing. but he convinced himself, and believe me, I can see how people get there. How many of you have heard a prophet say, oh, this is when Jesus is coming back? Y2K, anybody? Anybody build up a storehouse for yourself? Here's my green bean cans, and here's my prune cans, and here's my cans, and here's all these. I'm preparing for Jesus to come back. It's 2019. Do you know how many others since 2000 have been spoken? Like there's some calendar out there that everybody's supposed to live by, and the Messiah is coming back at this time, and it's like, If the Son of the living God doesn't know when he's coming back, neither are we. So let's stop trying to predict it and be responsible with what he's been given, what we've been given. That's the whole point. I think Jesus is kind of serious about our life. This helps me understand that when somebody takes their own life, how grieving that must be to him. If he's this intense about a life lived, I can't help but understand his grief for somebody who just wants to take their own life. No, there's more to your life than that. Don't end it early. And so don't minimize your life. If you're frustrated with how our day is, that's okay. I want to be kind of let down by this here and now because there's something greater coming. So I'm not surprised by the brokenness of this world, but what we need to be about is paying attention to what's been given to us, and then be responsible with it. My goodness, we could sing an old school Sunday school song, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine." The whole purpose of our life is to allow the light and the life of Christ to come out of us. Your faith in your relationship with Christ is not a private matter. He will cut him to pieces and assign him to a place with the unbelievers. And that slave who knew his master's will and didn't prepare himself or do it will be severely beaten. So you can start off knowing, but then I didn't really fully unpack this section there where it says, but didn't prepare himself or do it. You can't do what you're not prepared for. That's fitting in any aspect of life. Anybody ever try to go camping? Not prepared? It's just not going to happen. If you go camping with only a sleeping bag, it will not go well for you. If you try to cook a meal without being prepared, isn't that one of the most frustrating things when you think you have all of the ingredients? You thought you did, you didn't check, you just thought you did. And it would be something silly like butter. Like who doesn't have butter? Or something silly, something so simple, but if you're not prepared, then the meal can't be complete. And I found that the most frustrating meals that can't be completed are desserts. I mean, I knew I wanted a dessert, but I wasn't prepared for it, therefore I couldn't do it. I mean, I know I wanted to please God, but I didn't feed on the Word of God, and therefore, because I didn't have the Word in me, I couldn't let His Word live out of me. I wanted to live for God, but I'm skeptical about this whole being filled with the Holy Spirit thing, even though Jesus, the Son of the living God, said, I've got to go so I can send. So that way the Spirit, the Comforter, will be with you. And I want to be led by God, but I'm not prepared. I haven't prepared myself to say, fill me with your presence, fill me with your Spirit. Therefore, I can't fully do. what he wants me to do. I want to be generous. I know God's moving on my heart to be generous, but I'm even stuck at tithing. Therefore, I can't do what he's called me to do. Man, doesn't this get kind of sticky? With what you've been given, you are responsible for. You are responsible for that which you've been given. You came into this world with nothing. And what you have, you can trace it all the way back to God's provision. Strip everything of what you got, and even at that point, just strip down nothing, you still got something, which is life in Christ. That is from God. But we've got to be prepared so that we can do what we've been called to do. He goes on, he says this, but the one who did not know and did things deserving of a beatdown, basically, will be beaten lightly. That just sounds cruel. How can a God of love put a beatdown on somebody that didn't know? Because whether somebody who didn't know would like to acknowledge it or not, aside from Jesus, there's still this moral compass within every person that would understand that beating somebody is wrong. Physical abuse is wrong. If that's a revelation, now you know. If you'd have a hard time convincing me that you think that getting drunk is okay. That's what he said about the servant up here, the one that didn't think the master was ever going to come. The master's delaying, and so he starts beating the male and female slaves and eating and drinking and getting drunk. We don't need teachers to say, listen, getting hammered is not good. What? Really? I've been doing that like every day. Speaking with profanity isn't going to go well for you. What? Seriously? I cuss every day. We could go down the roster of things, right? We could just go down the things. Everything that we feel like we're being withheld from. Man, I could just rip off a list right now. But even without a knowledge of Christ, we know right from wrong. Why? Why do I know that? Because we are created in the image of God. But even that one who didn't know they didn't know, and they made decisions that are deserving of being beat down. They will be beaten lightly. So, this isn't an encouragement not to know, because all of y'all know now. You've been sitting here listening about the truth of who Jesus is. So you know. But let's just, if you had a choice before the first message that you would ever hear in your noggin, it would almost be better, according to this parable that Jesus taught, it's better, the outcome is better for the uninformed than the informed. Specifically, those who are informed and are irresponsible with it. It would be better for you to be ignorant and live carelessly than to be informed and live carelessly. So then he concludes this section by saying these words. Much will be required of everyone who has been given much, and even more will be expected of the one who has been entrusted with more. You remember Peter's question? Lord, are you telling this parable to us or to everyone? This is Jesus' answer to Peter's question. And I would presume it would go something like this. Remember, thousands of people Jesus is teaching. We're not quite there to 1,000 yet, but this is kind of a gathering, right? In my mind, this is kind of how it would be. Much will be required of everyone. Much will be required of everyone who has been given much. Now, if Josiah were Peter, this is kind of what I see this playing out like. Much will be required of everyone who has been given much, and even more will be expected of the one who has been entrusted with more. I can just see Jesus turning to Peter and saying those statements. So in a general sense, in a collective sense, everyone has been given something. Much will be required of everyone who has been given much. So if you are in the bunch who has been given much, much is required of you. And Jesus is saying there are some that even more has been entrusted to, and so there's more expected from those. And so we need to be careful with what we ask him for, because if we ask him for influence, if we ask him for him to work through us, we are inviting the much and even the much more to land here. And what we're asking, and really what we're telling him is, I'm trustworthy of the much that you would give me. And then from that point on, that's the litmus test of the truth of that declaration. Does your life show that you are trustworthy of what you've been given? Or do you squander? Have we squandered, as the capital C church, the life of Christ? Have we been careless with the life of Christ? That haunts me sometimes. Not that I'm going to go crazy and start drawing up poster board signs like, no Jesus or go to hell. That doesn't really help anybody. I've never felt more close to Jesus when reading a sign of condemnation. But when I see the grace of Jesus evident in somebody's life, so where they're able to forgive in a narrative where it just seems like forgiveness would be an impossibility, I see Jesus there. And that person is not squandering what's been given to them. This is huge, y'all. To whom much has been given, much is required. Freely you have been given, freely you have received, freely give. All of that's playing out in this life of waiting until we no longer draw air in these lungs. This life that we live is a life of waiting. And we have to be responsible with it, not careless. Man, that sounds like such a simple statement, doesn't it? But trace your life. Trace the decisions and the actions of your life and see if it matches that statement. I'm going to try to do something really, really fast. Peter is the one that asks this question. Who is this for? Is this for everyone or is this for us? Well, I wonder how well this truth got situated into Peter. I don't know how acquainted you are with Peter, but early in Jesus' ministry, I'm sure that Jesus and Peter probably passed one another before Jesus got in his boat, but there's a moment when Peter and the rest of his crew were out fishing all night. They spent a whole evening out there fishing. That was their occupation. They came in with empty boats, empty nets. It was not a good night. In that morning, when they are mending their nets and they're washing everything up, Jesus jumps in Peter's boat and says, hey, can you push me out a little bit? I need to do some teaching. I'm sure Peter was not in the mood. Nonetheless, he and his group get in the boat. They push off. Jesus teaches. Jesus says, throw your net out. I'm sure Peter's like, seriously? They catch so many fish that they can't bring it in. Peter falls down on his face and says, I'm a filthy man. Get away from me. And at that point, Jesus says, from now on, Peter, you're going to be a fisher of men. That's what was given to Peter. And for the next 3 years, he was on a learning track of what it was to be a disciple. The crucifixion happens. The disciples flee. They're meeting someplace sequestered by themselves for fear of the religious leaders at that time. Jesus, resurrected, comes into that meeting. At some point after the resurrection, there's a point where Peter gets frustrated again or doesn't know what to do. Guess what Peter does? He goes back in the boat to fish for fish. This time Jesus just walks along the shoreline. He calls out to them, hey, have you guys caught anything? It's the worst question to ask fishermen when they haven't caught anything. No. Jesus says, throw your net on the right side of the boat. They catch so many fish they can't bring it in. Light goes off in Peter's head. John says, hey, that's Jesus. Peter was kind of in his fishing clothes, so he was stripped down a little bit. It says this, that he gathered up his clothing. Remember what we talked about last week? Gird up your loins. Get all your stuff tied around. He tied his outer garment around him, jumps out of the boat, swims to Jesus. And there's a conversation that Jesus has with Peter where he reminds him of what has been given to him. I've called you to be a fisher of men, not a fisher of fish. The early church was established on Peter. He wrote 2 small letters in the New Testament. And in the same way that Jesus uses this parable of a team of slaves keeping the home prepared while the master is away, much of Peter's verbiage in his letters is about being bound to Christ. I think he got it. The question is, how much of our lifetime is going to be absorbed with time before we get what we've been given, before we understand what's been given to us? And not to belabor this any much more, but the reason why this is significant, the reason why it's important for you to know what you've been given is because there are broken individuals in our region, in our county, in our community who need to see the life of Christ that's been given to somebody lived out. And it doesn't require a church organized event for you to live that out. Just go live and let the life of Christ live through you. Along the way, yeah, we're going to have some things, but I think it is much more sustainable and much more powerful when it's just the reality of Christ living through you. That's what you've been given. You've been given Jesus, His life. How responsible have you been with what you've been given? I just kind of gave you the answer to the question. But I do believe that there are specific callings that have been given to us as well. And so aside from Jesus, what have you been given? I wanted you to take a few minutes and write down some thoughts answering that question. What have you been given? If you're unfamiliar with this portion of the service, maybe you're new, we do this at the end of each service where we pose a question. That way you're able to process the message and make it tangible for yourself. But take a few minutes and write some thoughts down.